We're going to be looking at adding and subtracting like terms. Why this is important is because we're going to move into solving equations. And our equations are going to get so complicated that we are going to need to understand how to add and subtract like terms. So it's important to know that there are three different types of terms that we're going to be looking at. One is our constant term, which is just a number. It could be 1, 2, 3. I'm thinking of it like a little square. The other one is the x term that we're going to be looking at, and this is a 1 by x length, and so we call that 1x. And the third term we're going to look at is x squared, so that's an x by x length. I like the visuals because we need to know that a 1 and an x squared are not the same thing. So when we're combining them, we need to know which is which. One thing to remember is zero property, and zero property of addition is a number and its opposite always add up to zero. So it's always good to know that opposites add up to zero. So what we're going to do is we're going to use blocks. If you have blocks, then you could do it. If you don't have blocks, then we're just kind of making our own. So we have a length of x, and then we have -2, so that would be 1 and 2. And then I fill it in as a negative. And then I have 2x, and so we have 2 blocks that are x length. And then I have 5 littles. And when I'm looking at this, the reason that zero property is so important is because a number and its opposite always add up to 0. So we can see that that adds up to 0. So we're left with 1, 2, 3. So we have 3 x's, and we have 3 positives because the other 2 were canceled. So that gives us 3x plus 3. Now for the next one, what we have is 2x. So we have 2 x's, and we have 5 positives. And then we have 2 positives. And we have 3 x's. But this is a -3. So what I like to do is just fill it in, just letting it know that those are not positive, those are negative. Now, when we're looking at this, once again, I'm using zero property. So I have an x and a -x, and they become 0. I have an x and a -x, they become 0. So I'm left with a -x. Now I have 5 positives and 2 positives, so that would be a total of 7 positives. Now for letter C, I have x squared, so that would be a big square. And I have an x, and I have 3 negatives. So I have 1 negative, I have 2 negatives, I have 3 negatives. I have another big x squared. I have a -2x, so I have 2 x's. Since they're negative, I fill it in, just reminding myself those are negatives. And then I have -4, so -1, -2, -3, and -4. So the x squared and the x squared become 2x squared. And then I have an x and a -x, and that cancels and becomes 0. So I'm left with a -x. And I have 3 negatives and 4 negatives, so that would be a total of 7 negatives. Now, when I'm looking at subtraction, what I'm doing is I'm basically distributing the negative to each of the terms. So I have x plus 6 minus 3x minus 1. And x and -3x is -2x. And 6 and -1 is 5. Now we're eventually moving away from the blocks, and we should get pretty good with the adding and the subtracting. So I have 3x plus 5 minus 4, and then plus 2x. So 3x and 2x is 5x. 5 and -4 gives us a positive 1. And our last one, we have -x squared plus 2x minus 1. I'm distributing the negative to each of the terms. So that gives me -x squared, a positive, because a negative and negative is a positive. And then a negative is a positive. So I have the x squareds. Both of them are negative, so that would be -2x squared. Then I'm looking at my x's, and I have a 2x and a 2x, so that would be 4x. And then I have a -1 and a +6. Those have different signs, so I know I'm subtracting. Larger one is positive. And so that would give me my answer. So what I want you to do is try these 6 on your own and see how you do. Okay, looking at the first one, 4x and 2x is 6x. -10, +5 is -5. We have x and -7x is -6x. We have 5 and -9, that would be -4. We have 2x squared, and x squared would be 3x squared. We have -x, we have -8x. Since both of them are negative, that would be -9x. And subtraction and negatives I'm kind of treating interchangeably. If I'm subtracting 3, or think of it as a -3 and a -2, that would be -5. Now with the subtracting, remember I'm distributing the negative to each of the terms. So I have 5x plus 2 minus 13x plus 11. 5x and -13x is -7. Sorry, -8. -8x. And then I have a 2 and an 11, which would be a 13. With the next one, I'm distributing the negative to each of the terms. So I have 4x minus 2 minus 7 plus x. Once again, I'm looking at my like terms. 4x and x would be 5x. -2, -7 would be -9. And my last one, I distribute the negative to each of the terms. So 2x squared minus 2x minus 9. That would be a plus 6x and then plus a 4. I have a 2x squared, and then -2x, positive 6x is positive 4x, and -9 and positive 4 would be -5.